All right, we're talking about the top players of the 2025-26 season. These are the 10 guys that I feel had the best seasons as a whole last year. This is counting regular season, playoffs, team success, individual success. So yeah, let's get into it. First, I want to do honorable mentions: Tyrese Maxey, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Donovan Mitchell. These are guys that had really good seasons. I wouldn't be that mad if you put them in your personal top 10 players list. But I think these guys just fell short, maybe due to lack of team success, didn't get too far in the playoffs, individual performance, anything like that. I just don't think they matched up to the guys that I put in my top 10. Let's start out number 10, Scottie Barnes. Depending on how you feel about him, this is kind of a crazy pick. There's a lot of diehard Scottie Barnes fans out there that aren't surprised about this pick. They probably might even have him a little bit higher than I do. But he is definitely one of the best defenders in the NBA. Gotta be close to that top 5. I'm really shocked he didn't end up being an all-NBA player. I thought for sure he was at least a top 15 guy and should have totally been voted in there ahead of Jalen Duren. But yeah, had a great season. He averaged 18 points, 6 assists, 7.5 rebounds on 51% from the field. All defense second team, could have been first team, but I guess the voters weren't feeling that. And in my personal opinion, he was snubbed for All-NBA. He was 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting, which I think is right where he should be. I would say he's right around that 5th to 6th best defender in the NBA. The Raptors lost in 7 in the first round to the Cavs. But this is a Raptors team that no one really thought was going to be a playoff team. You know, the general consensus was this is a play-in team. And if they do make the playoffs, this is a lower seeded team. But they went ahead and were the 5th seed in the conference. And this is all thanks to Scottie Barnes, anchoring a great defense, being an offensive engine, excellent passer for his size. He can get to the basket. Every time I turn on a Raptors game, this dude, he's just dominating for the Raptors. He does everything the team needs. He's really their glue guy. Yeah, great player. His best game of the season was 23 points, 25 rebounds, 10 assists, 3 steals, and an overtime win versus the Warriors. This guy, he really does everything. Some nights he provides a lot of scoring. Sometimes he's your main distributor. Most of the time he's grabbing a ton of boards, and every game he's probably the best defender on the team. So yeah, this is my 10th best player this past season. Number 9, Jaylen Brown, just got traded to the Sixers. Pretty polarizing on how people feel about him around the league, whether he's close to a top 5 guy. I've heard a lot of people saying he's not even a top 15 to 20 player. I've seen takes that he's not even top 50. I think those are just in bad faith because he is actually a top 10 player, if not real close to that, depending on how you feel about him and what he brings to the table. This past season, he averaged 29 points, 5 assists, 7 rebounds on 48% from the field. He was voted on the All-NBA second team and 6th in MVP voting. And, he led the Celtics to 56 wins and the 2 seed in the conference in a year where everyone thought the Celtics should tank. And even if they aren't trying to lose, that they aren't going to be a playoff team. And without their number 1 option, Jaylen Brown carries his team to 56 wins. Despite not having that much talent around him. I mean, this is a great Celtics organization with an awesome coaching staff. But a lot of credit goes to Jaylen Brown for holding it down. He was really the go-to guy for most of the season. I think he missed very few games. And his best game of the season came against the Clippers, where he scored 50 points on 18 of 26 from the field. And he was doing stuff all season to will the Celtics to victory because they didn't really have a lot of go-to scoring guys outside of him. Number 8 for me is Kawhi Leonard, despite all his past injury problems, him not playing that many games, going into his age 35 season. So he's getting up there in age, and still, man, he's a killer. He averaged 28 points, 3.5 assists, and 6.5 rebounds on 51% from the field, 39% from 3, 89% from the line, almost a 50-40-90 season, which is crazy for how long he's been in the league. He's still this efficient of a player. He was voted onto the All-NBA second team and was 7th in the MVP voting. I got a bullet point that just says aimbot because of his 55-point game versus the Pistons. Honestly, there are games where he pulls up and you know he's not missing. He's got such a pretty jump shot. I think in that game against the Pistons, he scored 20 points in the first quarter. And it's just like you can get a hand in his face. You can throw two guys at him. It doesn't matter that shot's going in when he decides that it's time to lock in and start making every shot he takes. And although the Clippers didn't make the playoffs, what he did for this team was amazing. I mean, the Clippers started, 6-21? They had a terrible start to the season. And despite that, Kawhi gets the Clippers to a play-in game where they ultimately lose, but still, without Kawhi, this is probably the worst team in the league. So, huge props to him. That's why I got him number 8 on my top 10 players list. At 7, we got Anthony Edwards. He didn't play enough games to get an All-NBA team, but definitely would have gotten there had he played just a few more games. He averaged 29 points, 4 assists, 5 rebounds on 50% from the field, 40% from 3. Really continued what he was doing last season, being one of the best three-point shooters in the league. With his level of athleticism, really makes him an unstoppable guy. Really, all you could ask from him is to be a little bit better of a facilitator. But even without that, man, he's still easily a top 10 player. And I think he hurt his knee in the playoffs against the Nuggets. Because, yeah, he was on a pretty big minutes restriction in that series. He comes back from that injury that looked like it probably should have kept him out for at least a month. And he goes beast mode versus the Spurs, absolutely torching them in the fourth quarter of game 1 to steal a game on the road. They'd ultimately lose in 6, but man, this is just an unstoppable player when he's at the peak of his powers. His best game of the season actually came against the Spurs in a close loss where he dropped 55 points, 19 of 33 from the field, hit 9 threes. That's just an example of he does everything for the Wolves offense, and I'd really love to see how he and LaMelo do next season. What he's going to do with a great creator next to him, man, that's going to be crazy. All right, number 6, I've got my Detroit Piston leader, Cade Cunningham. Maybe it's a little biased to have him 6th, but I think this is a really good spot for him, whether or not you're a Pistons fan. I think I'm not going to get too much hate for this one. He averaged 24 points, 10 assists, 5.5 rebounds on 46% from the field. He was selected for the All-NBA first team, despite only playing 64 games. He was granted an exception because of the collapsed lung. He was 5th in MVP voting and led the Pistons to 60 wins and the first seed in the East. Just 2 seasons ago, man. Detroit wins 14 games. It looks like they're never going to be even close to the playoffs for at least a few years. And here they are winning the conference with 60 wins. I mean, honestly, you asked me before the season what I thought the odds of a 60-win team were. I thought it would have been really long odds that this Pistons team could win 60 games. But man, he led this team. He was like the engine of the offense every single game. Without Cade, they really don't know what they're doing out there. And like I mentioned earlier, collapsed lung at the end of the season versus the Wizards. But he came back with a couple games left to be ready for the playoffs. They do go down 3-1 against the 8-seed Orlando Magic, but they actually come back and win that series, which is really helped out by a 45-point game, down 3-1 to win Game 5. He hits 5 of 8 of his threes despite not being a great three-point shooter to save them from elimination. And they do go on to lose in 7 versus the Cavs in the second round. But still, great season from Cade and the Pistons. And his best game of the season came against the Knicks on February 19th. Scored 42 points, 13 assists. He was just really owning the Knicks all season. Every game they played against New York, he was a stud, leading them to sweep the season series. I was tempted to put the overtime win versus the Wizards towards the beginning of the season as his best game, but he did set an NBA record for most missed shots in a game. Number 5, Jalen Brunson. Now, this is kind of a hot take, I think. I don't know. I think the general consensus is that Brunson really elevated where people are placing him on top players lists. But I haven't seen him higher than like 9th or 10th. But the Knicks won a championship and he led them there. So it's really hard for me to put him under guys like Cade and Ant, who technically they might be better. Everyone's better than Brunson until it's time to be better than Brunson. In these head-to-head games, he's always outplaying these guys that are supposed to be better than him. Like, everyone knows what he does in the clutch, which is why I have him as the 5th best player. He was All-NBA second team, led the Knicks to 53 wins as the 3 seed, but most importantly, NBA champion and Finals MVP. They beat the Spurs in 5 games in the finals for their first championship in 53 years, and he averaged 32 a game in the finals. It's hard to beat that, man. The only reason the players ahead of him are ahead of him is because we got some of the best top-end talent that we've ever seen in the NBA. But yeah, Brunson at number 5. My 4th best player is Luka Doncic. Some of the PR around him this season wasn't great. There was a long stretch where everyone's talking about his terrible defense, even though it's really not that bad. I mean, he's not a good defender by any means, but he is not the worst defender in NBA history like people claim. He averaged 33.5 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, was All-NBA first team, 4th in MVP voting. Is this guy ever going to win an MVP? I mean, this guy's always putting up great stats, near triple-doubles on scoring titles, leading teams to good records, but because he's going up against all-time greats in Shea and Jokic and now Wemby, it's going to be real hard for this guy to get that MVP trophy. But yeah, had a great season. Maybe not one of his best seasons visually if you're watching the guy. He didn't look as great as he did in 2024 when he made the finals, but he still did what he does best, being probably the best offensive engine guard in the league. He injured his hamstring against the Thunder towards the end of the year and missed the entire playoffs. Didn't even get a chance to do what he does best in the playoffs and prove the doubters wrong. But he'll be back next year. His best game of the season was 60 points on 18 of 30 from the field against the Heat. My 3rd best player, Nikola Jokic. This is where we're starting to get to a point where there's some contention on who we actually think is the best player in the NBA. I think if you were to ask me who's the best player going into next season, I might elevate Jokic to that number 1 spot. But if we're talking about just last season and how everyone played, how he played, I think I got to slide Jokic down to my number 3 spot, man. He averaged 28 points, 10.5 assists, 13 rebounds a game on great efficiency, 57% from the field. Was All-NBA first team, 2nd in MVP voting. Nuggets won 54 games and were the 3 seed. However, they lost in the first round against a pretty beat-up Timberwolves team, and he did not play great in that series. He averaged, 26, 9, and 13, which is typical Jokic numbers, but on 44% from the field. He was really being shut down by Rudy Gobert. And really, post-injury, Jokic kind of lost some steam at the second half of the season. Wasn't playing his best basketball. His best game of the season was a crazy 56 point, 15 assists, 16 rebound overtime win versus the Timberwolves, which is a huge rival for them. Jokic is going to put up those crazy stats, but that doesn't automatically make him the best player in the NBA. You really got to earn that title in the playoffs. My 2nd best player, Victor Wembanyama. I was ready to name him my best player in the NBA, but after that finals performance, I don't think I'm ready to put him there yet. He'll definitely take that title, and once he takes it, I don't think he'll look back, but I think we're getting a little overzealous here about naming him the best player in the league, because I think people are getting a little confused here, like how good we know he's going to be with how good he is now. He's still got really raw parts of his game, which is why I just can't quite have him as the best player yet. But his defense is so unreal that despite being a little unpolished on offense, it doesn't really matter. And that's why he's my 2nd best player, because he's a transcendent defensive talent. When he's locked in on defense, absolutely shifts how the opposing team plays on offense. He can't really attack the rim at all, and in fact, the matchups against the Pistons just looked like we couldn't get anything done. Playing against Victor Wembanyama just makes us look like a G League team. So he can really shift how teams play on offense, which is why he's the number 2 best player. At this point, you can assume who's going to be number 1 because his name hasn't been said yet. But still got to go over Victor. He averaged 25 points, 3 assists, 11.5 rebounds on 51% from the field. He was All-NBA first team, 3rd in MVP voting, Defensive Player of the Year. Spurs win 62 games after not making the playoffs last season, and they make it to the finals too, which is so crazy. If you ask anyone where the Spurs would be at the end of the season, I think a lot of people would have said they made the playoffs and maybe even won a series, but definitely not 60-win team that made the finals. I think the manner in which they lost the finals was a little rough, but I think a lot of people are forgetting that this is not a team that was even expected to be a top 3 team in the conference, and they went ahead and made the finals. But yeah, that finals performance, not great. You know, they lose in 5 games. Most of the games they lost, they had leads for the entire game, ended up blowing it in the 4th quarter, even had that 29-point lead in Game 4, which they eventually collapse and lose and allow the Knicks to go up 3-1. And if you're the best player in the world, I kind of expect you to take over in those games. Maybe not necessarily on offense because he's just not there yet, but he's got to really make his presence felt on defense and stop that run from happening. Don't let this team go up 3-1 because once the team's up 3-1, I mean, they're statistically already the champions. I mean, there's only one team that's ever come back from that, and that's the LeBron comeback. So Wemby wasn't ready to do that yet. And yeah, for me to call him the best player in the world, I wish he was doing a little bit more to prevent that. Still made the finals, though. It's really hard to argue against that. He averaged 26 points, 11 rebounds on 42% from the field in that final series. Yeah, I mean, he's gonna learn from this. He's probably gonna come back into next season way stronger and ready to prove all the doubters wrong. Don't be shocked if the Spurs go and win the championship next season. So by process of elimination, you can assume that my best player in the NBA is still Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. A lot of people hate this guy because of the foul baiting and the free throws and the flopping and all that. I still think he's the most consistent player in the NBA, and really that's my favorite attribute of a player is consistency. A guy that you can count on every night, regardless of defensive coverages. He can get in his bag and get a bucket when you need it the most. It wasn't always that obvious in the playoffs that he could do that, especially versus the Spurs. They did a pretty good job at guarding him. But in the elimination game, you know, he had 35 points and 9 assists and almost brought the Thunder to back-to-back finals, which no team has really been able to do in this recent era. So for the season, Shai averaged 31 points, 6.5 assists, 4 rebounds, 55% from the field, 39% from 3, 88 from the line. Almost a 50-40-90 season on that volume. We haven't really seen that since Steph Curry in 2016. He won his 2nd consecutive MVP. He was the clutch player of the year, led the Thunder to 64 wins in the West. He was super efficient at the start of the playoffs. He averaged 28 points, 8 assists for the entire playoff run. Yeah, eventually eliminated by the Spurs in 7, but I think the rest of his team failed him in that elimination game. He should have been better for the majority of that series, but in the do-or-die game, he showed up, and I really respected that. He wasn't foul baiting. He was getting to his spots and getting buckets when the Thunder needed it the most. So a guy like that is really hard for me to say he's not the best in the NBA, especially coming off a 2nd straight MVP. His best game of the season, in my opinion, is the 35-point, 15 assists game versus the Nuggets. I think it was in March. But yeah, I was watching that game live. He basically hits 2 game winners, hits that 3, and then the Nuggets come down and get a 4-point play to take the lead, I think. And then Shai goes and hits a step-back 3 again to win the game. That's why he's the best in the league. You can throw whatever coverage you want at him. You can throw 2, even 3 guys at him. You can have your whole defense structured to stop Shai, and it doesn't even matter because he will get to his spot and score. And that's why he draws so many fouls. A lot of people don't like it. He falls on the ground. And yeah, I don't like the flopping, but when you're that good, you're going to get guarded physically. And that leads to free throws. And that's why he's the best player in the league. So let me know what you guys think about that in the comments. Let me know if there's any players that should be on this list, any spots that should be switched around. And I will make a video here sometime this off season about who are the best 10 players going into next season. Because I don't believe that's actually the same thing as the 10 best players of last season. I think there's guys that would be on here if they weren't injured. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this video, and if you liked it, drop a like. All right. Thanks for watching.